topic, delivering criticism.
No linkage to bad morale, really.
None. None. So Bridgette, Myers-Briggs tells us that there's all different kinds of personality types. But when you're delivering criticism to your staff, do you take that into account? And do you really need to? How do you stay true to your own management style?
Yeah. I like Myers-Briggs because it's simple. You can be kind of down and dirty with it. You're not always right, but you're close to right, even with a guess. And I think it does help to have some anticipation of how someone processes information, specifically when you're going to deliver criticism. But I think the most important thing, and this is part about dealing with morale, is being honest. I will give surface-level criticism in any environment, but it's on-the-spot coaching, and it's done with love, really. But I will have a really firm, direct message that starts with something that sounds like this: you're probably not going to like this conversation. I'm going to be real direct with you, and I think you owe that to people. I think sometimes people are too worried about the takeaway, and so instead of just saying, listen, this isn't going to be comfortable, but you're okay, you're not losing your job, because I know you can do better, and I want to have this very important conversation with you. I think it gives someone the opportunity, should they be capable of it, of really digging in, and some development can take place from there. If you word around it and you try to soft pedal something, I think the other person gets a little lost in the message, and they find themselves disputing, without even wanting to be defensive often, what you're saying, because you've taken the long way around something that could just be very direct. But I think ending any message that you send that's critical in nature, it's always important to let them know, I'm here to provide support X, Y, and Z, because you owe that to someone if you're going to provide them some feedback. And then secondly, I believe in you. I know that you can get this done. And, let's do this together. And then coming back later and closing the loop. I think sometimes people do create improvement, and we fail to come back. And I guess there's just this anticipation that, hey, I didn't come back to you, so you must be good. Maybe that works, but I don't think that's the most efficient way to do it, and I don't think that builds long-lasting relationships. I've been blessed to work with some of the same professionals 3, 4, and 5 times. They might not say they're blessed, but they keep coming back. And I think that this is the kind of stuff that builds that trust currency that you can take from industry to industry, from brand to brand. And the great thing about having that is when you look back and you're in a 20-year career, you're not managing the same kind of risk that somebody is with a brand new team. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to managing their performance, which must in some way be critical, because not everyone is a rock star at every moment of the day, even if they are spectacular in most of what they do. So I think just really being honest and then coming back and closing the loop is really important.
Setting the expectation seems to be a key theme. Jason, how do you approach this?
Well, I think unlike wine, criticism does not get better with age. So there's definitely, certainly at SAP and I'm sure many other large organizations, there's a very structured annual review process, right? We do mid-year and full-year reviews. And my advice is not to save up critical moments for that process. I think it's something that as a leader, we like to have regular interaction with my employees and my teams to make sure that we're on top of things as they are happening and unfolding, so that really, as something happens on a project or during the course of a day, people can get that feedback, critical or positive, in a very timely fashion, putting an action plan around it, and then being able to move forward, so that by the time you get to those bigger milestones along the performance journey, there shouldn't be surprises. The worst situation is walking into a review that you know is going to be a tough one at the mid-year and seeing the look of surprise in an employee's face, and I've had that happen. And that's when I know I haven't been as good as a manager as I could be, because there shouldn't be a surprise. There should be a mutual respect and understanding of where we each stand. Somebody should not walk into their annual review thinking they're going to be top box when you know they've been underperforming all year. So it's really about making sure that you make that conversation a part of each meeting you have with your folks and your teams, to make sure they know where they stand and what they need to build on and improve in the future, so that as you go through the broader process, there's a good understanding of where we're heading and where we're going together.
Now let me ask you as a follow-up to that, because so many of us work remotely, we have people we manage who work remotely. what's the best way to deliver feedback, positive or negative, in that situation? Email, phone, Skype?
Well, certainly, I think, it's interesting. Video conferencing used to be such a tough thing to do, and now with Skype, I Skype with my parents on the weekend, right? So this is something that I think any technologist can pick up, and I think that adds a whole other level of, I'll use the word intimacy, but a whole other level of conversation and communication you can have with remote employees. I think Bridgette made the comment that you can never over-communicate. And I know at SAP, obviously, we're 53,000 people spread across pretty much 120 some odd countries now. And I know one of the biggest things we do is we've got SAP TV, where you see the executives on a regular basis, but then right down from, we saw Sanjay Poonen speak earlier this morning, to John Schweitzer, to Adam Binney, who's the head of business intelligence. We all do town hall meetings. We all do video conferences. We all then cascade that down into individual teams, where I have a weekly team meeting and weekly one-on-ones. And it's all about sharing not only the good things that are going on with the business, but the hard choices that are being made in the business, and then allowing people to participate in that in some way, whether that be in a forum, via email, via questions. So it's not just a one-way discourse, it's a dialogue. And I think for remote employees especially, they need to feel that discourse, that two-way dialogue, as opposed to, here's a newsletter, this is all the stuff that's happened, and this is what's coming next. That's not communication. It really needs to be that two-way street.
Paul, to pick up on that point, how do you know that someone's received the criticism that you've directed at them?
So I think one of the things that we try to do is create a culture of candor. So not just in IT or shared services, but at the Charmer Sunbelt Group throughout. And I think if you can do that well, then it is a two-way conversation, And so you're having a conversation about where somebody can improve. And what I try to do in that interaction is have them read it back to you almost, and they're not necessarily going to agree, with what you're saying, but to me it's a two-way conversation. Most are. Okay, now there are times where it's a one-way conversation, which are more direct and a little bit tougher, but I think if you open it up to where you can really understand why they made the decision they made, what they were trying to accomplish, and then you can help them see, I think as a leader you're more informed, to kind of gauge your criticism and or just the feedback that you have for the person. So I think creating a culture of candor creates that two-way communication, and then it sinks in better with somebody, right? So it wasn't just you saying you should do this. It was a conversation between two people, and usually hopefully two leaders that are just trying to improve.
Making sure that the other person feels respected.
Absolutely, because otherwise the defense mechanisms go up. They're not hearing what you say anyway. So the quality of that interaction goes way down. And I also think it matters how much are you praising in public, right? I mean, the old saying, praise in public and criticize in private, right? And I think if you're doing the right things as a leader and you're cheering your people on, then they're also more open to conversations that are tougher, and if they also know that, and they trust you, that it's designed to help you improve, then it's going to be a better conversation, and they're going to retain it more.
Well, let's take off on that particular topic, praise in public, criticize in private. Lisa, I know that, when you've led your winning teams, you might not have approached this in the same way. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how it worked out?
Well, I definitely needed Paul's speech a few years ago when I was leading a team, because I didn't really understand the fact that you should probably lead in public and criticize in private. So my thought was, hey, let's just get the whole team together and let's talk about the issues, because we're having problems. And sometimes you get groups together and you think, hey, let's just be honest with each other. I'll start with myself, and that's what I did. So I started to criticize myself about things that I could have done better, what I could have done better for the team, times that I felt like maybe I was a slacker. So those were things that I could improve and help. And then I thought, well, okay, let's go around the room and let me tell you what I think you could do too. So that's probably where I went wrong, because then I began to criticize my teammates on what each one of them had done wrong as well. Yeah, that's probably not a good approach. So when you start to criticize people, I think what I've done differently and what I've done is that I think it's better to get your team together and really talk about your goals and what you think that you can do. Because people like to talk about themselves, and I think it's great when you Do that in a group form with your team and let people tell you exactly what their own expectations are of themselves. That way you help them to be more accountable when they don't do what they say they're going to do. And I found that that approach later helped us go from losing to winning because people were more inspired by themselves of what they said, but now that you've said it in a whole group setting, when it was time to criticize, it was a lot easier. I could just say, remember, Bridgette, what you said you wanted to do, and I'm here to help you to do that. That was a much better approach. And then on a day-to-day basis, you're able to see when people are really performing at their best, if they're being accountable for what they said they wanted to do, as opposed to, well, just criticizing them. So I think that the approach that I learned was not necessarily not to criticize, but to really get together and make people inspire themselves about what it is that they feel that they can do, and then you learn to hold each other more accountable. And when you had to deliver criticism, it was a lot easier to remind them of what they said they wanted to accomplish, as opposed to me pointing out what they didn't do.
It really goes back to what Paul is speaking about creating a culture in which people feel respected and trusted, and that you could say that in front of all their peers and, you know, hold them accountable for it.
And just to add on, I think when you attack the issues, right? I mean, and Lisa said, you know, about the goals, but when you also attack the issues and not people, that's a great group setting, right? Because then everybody's going after the issue and nobody's getting defensive, and so that's a great way to do it.
There's one thing I'd like to add on that too. You asked an important question with Jason. You asked about dealing with people that are remote. Sometimes this is true of someone just across the hall because we're also attached to our devices. But I think it's really important for you to consider not using email as a tool to deliver sentiment and coaching, but rather as just an information sharing tool. If we have a conversation, even if I have to pick up the phone and call you in 5 time zones away, it says something that I didn't send you an email. And then secondly, you're going to get my tone, you're going to get the approach, and I don't have to worry that you've either inflated the issue or failed to correctly understand the importance of the issue. And then email is a great tool to summarize, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. But so many times I've had issues where I've come in to try to deal with something that's been escalated, and I have to read 7 strings down to figure out what the original email was, and the problem is that it was email to begin with. So I throw that out there. Maybe some of you do it differently and you do it really well, but if you choose to use email to deliver criticism, think twice before you send. Sometimes it's just a great venting device, and then you pick up the phone and you're better prepared for a conversation that you should be having more as close to in person in this remote world as we can really be.
We actually have someone on our staff who's in this room who uses email to sort of vent her concerns, but she doesn't put anything anyone in the receiver, to the to line. Just writes everything out, gets her piece out, and then deletes it, because then you think a lot more clearly and you don't have that email regret. Send the next day, but yeah, I mean, it can be a great tool. It can be a great tool. I don't know. You'll have to ask her. We'll move on to our next topic here. That's some great insight. Anyone know this one? Apollo 13. I don't know. There was a lot of hands in. This movie was just on this weekend, too. You'll have to sort that one out, Gina.
Jump ball.
We got one more, though. This one. Very good. Very good.